Greetings everyone, I'm Mar. Once again, this is my opinion. As you can tell from the title up there, I am beginning another review series on this channel. And by the time that this video goes live, all or most of the reviews for Season 1 will have been pre-recorded. So unlike the Star Trek ones where they're going to be sporadic and not every episode of the series, and the Raymond ones, which are every week, until occasionally something comes up and I have to postpone it, like the last couple of weeks as of the time I'm recording this episode. It's going to be record most or all, and then start uploading them, so you get all my thoughts on a season, and as you can already tell from the date and day this is up, it's going to be Sundays once I start uploading these. Now, how they'll go live for the patrons, I haven't decided yet. Maybe I'll probably upload them and then give them Friday or whatnot. I still got a few to go. This is just going to be the video that I give my overall thoughts on the series. And as you can tell from the title, I am finally going to start revisiting Game of Thrones, the TV show adaptation of George R. R. Martin's long-running and, as of the time I'm recording this, unfinished book series, A Song of Ice and Fire. The show takes its title from the first book in the series, A Game of Thrones. And there are subsequent novels, A Clash of Kings. Let's see, then there's I don't have notes in front of me, so I'm trying to remember the title of all of them. There's A Clash of Kings. A little bit after that, there was A Feast for Crows and A Dance of Dragons. I'm trying... Oh, A Storm of Swords was the... There we go, Storm of Swords. Then there's a spin-off, A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, which is the Duncan Egg stories published in a book format. And then there's Fire and Blood Part 1, which Part 2 still has not come out yet, which I'm wondering when it's going to come out. But from what I understand, he hasn't written a lot of it yet. And part of that is, from what I also read, it looks like some of a lot of what was in the other one he'd already had pre-written for other things, so it's pretty easy to just add on to it and then boom. So he'll get to that when he gets to it, just like whenever he manages to get to finishing The Winds of Winter and then A Dream of Spring. Now, unlike, say, The Chronicles of Narnia and The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, which I did grow up on, but not like early childhood, except for the Hobbit animated series, if you want to count that. I came to this a little late in the game, like a lot of you who discovered it through the TV show. Like, my first memory proper of it is 2010, 2011-ish, when HBO started showing the promos for it. Eddard Stark, "In Winter is Coming." That whole thing, I'm like, what's this? I'm like, alright, I'll give this a shot when it comes out. And then we got rid of HBO for some weird reason. In those times, we were always adding and getting rid of different movie channels depending on how the price for them was going. This was around the time my grandfather was starting to get really ill. And then at the end of the year, he passed away. So we had to really start downsizing. And it would be still a couple more years before I got employment, since now I'm the main breadwinner in the house. We having the apps and stuff like that. You know, it's me having to crunch numbers and all that. Now, it would be a couple years before I actually sat down and watched the Game of Thrones proper. And through that time, I saw all the memes, I saw all the spoilers. A lot of my friends would watch it. So it wasn't until late 2014 into early 2015 that I actually sat down and marathon watched the show. Got a hold of copies of the first 4 seasons to watch them. And I just sat down and watched them, and I was really drawn in by it. I'm like, oh, this is pretty fun to watch. Of course, like I said, by that point, I'd been spoiled by a lot of the stuff, so I already knew about a lot of the stuff. And I'm going to have to mention this, so if you have not seen the show, let you know, even in the overview, there will be spoilers. That was Ned's fate. The whole thing involving Joffrey's parentage. Not the specific scene, but just the plot twist. Of course, "And now I've struck a king. Did my hand fall from my wrist?" Battle of the Blackwater. The Red Wedding. The Purple Wedding. A couple other things here and there, but those are the main ones. So by the time I got to those first 4 seasons, started watching them properly, I was mainly looking for the setup, like, say, for example, the Red Wedding. That whole penultimate episode, which is one of the things that was also spoiled, that a lot of major stuff will go down in the second to last episode of the season. So that whole episode 9, season 3, I was waiting to see, okay, what's going on here? Looking for foreshadowing. Then when I started hearing the music, I'm like, uh-oh, here it comes. And then when it happened, like, boom. And then watching it, I'm like, I wonder, people didn't know this was coming in both the book and the show. And I really wish I'd been sitting next to it. And I actually had the chance when my brother and his now wife were watching through it, but I decided, like, yeah, no, that might spoil a little bit too much, and then we wonder, why is he in here? But it would have been interesting just sitting there while doing this, like, oh, here it comes. You'll get more of my thoughts on that as I get through the series and actually get to season 3. So, after watching that, like a lot of you, I was hyped for season 5 to come. Like, here we go. And I actually enjoyed it when it was coming out. It was more me seeing the reaction of the fandom. Of course, this was also before I read the book, so I didn't really understand why a lot of the people were disappointed in the way they were. Just looking at it from a pure show perspective, I thought, I mean, it's not as good, but it's not that bad. It was then when I started diving into the lore behind the books, I started to understand it a little bit more. But it wasn't until I actually read the books that I fully understood. Like the first book in the series, A Game of Thrones, I've read 3 or 4 times as of this point. And that one, I would say, it's a pretty faithful adaptation based on that. I mean, there's stuff that they cut out, some of it for pacing reasons, unless they were going to add more episodes. Other stuff that might not translate as well for budget issues, which, of course, the penultimate battle is one thing, which I'll get to that when we get to that episode. And then in the subsequent seasons, adapted from the second and third book, same reason, some stuff for budget reasons, which will play into the penultimate battle of the Blackwater there, which I'll save that till we get to that episode. Other stuff for the, well, you know, the adaptation, transfer from page to screen. You gotta figure out how do you adapt stuff. Like the main one, which I'll delve into again when you see next week's episode in this series, the age of some of the characters. You have to age them up. Like, for example, John and Rob are 14 in the book, where they're more like late teens, early 20s on the show. That one, of course, you gotta do that. And because of that, you gotta subsequently age up all the characters under them. And for the characters of Sansa and Arya, you definitely get it because of some of the situations they find themselves in. Although, in that regard, it also makes some of what Sansa does a little bit stupider because she's not as young, so she doesn't have the naivete excuse. But you could probably go with the whole thing that she's sheltered, so she doesn't understand the full repercussions of what she's doing. There's a lot of stuff. We'll get more into that later, but as I trekked through the books, I started to understand more and more why fans were upset, especially with what they did to Stannis. I can completely understand why a lot of fans, especially long-term fans who have been reading these books as they came out, would understand why that's a character assassination. Now, the only series that went from book to page that quickly, from book to page to screen that quickly, that I was watching and reading subsequently was the Harry Potter series, and even that I came in late. I came in late like that one, like I did here. That one, of course, the only difference is I actually still had a couple books to come out before they were done. So I had a lot of time to backtrack and read through them, and also was younger. That's another series I'll probably revisit one of these days. I don't know if I'll read the books and then watch the films, or just watch the films and then give my thoughts based on what I remember. But with this one, definitely can see why a lot of fans did not like what they did with Stannis. The Ironborn plot, even though we did eventually get it. But even then, when I was actually reviewing the episodes as they came out a couple years ago, I was like, yeah, this doesn't feel as good. I mean, I'm going to be honest, the first time I read a lot of those ones, the Ironborn ones are not one of my favorites, so I kind of will admit I did skip a couple chapters with certain characters. The only Ironborn characters I never skipped were the 2 Greyjoys. The Greyjoy siblings, I should say, the younger ones. The older ones, it would depend. Like, alright, I'll read through this one. No, not grabbing me. Of course, now looking at it, I probably, next time I go through it, will not skip them, which will be interesting. So, probably whenever the announcement is made for A Dream of Spring's publication, I'll probably go back and read through all of them. I mean, I'm technically trying to reread the second one right now, which is a lot of stuff is distracting me in my personal life. Part of it is a promotion, part of it's some other stuff, so it just hasn't gotten me. I've noticed as I've gotten older, it's harder for me to fully jump into reading like when I was younger, but sometimes it works. I think it's also because I have less time now, and so trying to split it between all my hobbies. I mean, we got this, which is kind of a job, because I'm on Patreon and all that. And my video game hobby, watching stuff for this. Also have to study stuff now because of my promotion at work. And of course cosplay and all that, so I got to try to balance all the stuff, going to the gym, trying to make sure I eat correctly. My movie collection, there's some new stuff. And deciding when to go to the movies and all that. It's a balance, and with some of the other stuff I'm not going to go into, it was a little harder to balance it, but now I guess I got to delve more into it to try to keep my mind off of everything. But back on topic. The further I delved through, the more disappointment I did see they had, and that disappointment seemed to grow in the fandom with each subsequent season. Season 6, fans seem to like parts of it, and other parts are like, yeah, and a lot of it's like, that's not how it's going to go in the book. Which that cry got louder as we got to season 7, and definitely the last season. Now, the last season I was watching with my then girlfriend. We did enjoy it. I mean, we had some issues with it, but we did enjoy it for the most part. And looking back on it, yeah, they definitely did rush a lot of the stuff there. And part of it's like, yeah, they probably should have had a longer season. And it comes back to one of the major issues with the latter part of the show, and that is they cut out too much stuff. I mean, some of it is probably not going to amount to a hill of beans, use the old ism, by the time we get to the end game of the books. But still adapting it would have been interesting. Would have added more stuff. Part of it I could see why, because especially the younger actors aging up too much, but it's like, it is what it is. I mean, they didn't have Bran in season 5 anyway, so he was training off screen. I mean, they could have at least had like one episode with him and that's it, just to show what his plot line was doing at that point. But it is what it is. Maybe one day down the road, once the books are all completed, they'll probably do a second adaptation of it, and with all the books available, they'll be able to do a more faithful adaptation. Part of the reason the first couple seasons are as faithful to the source material as they are, it's twofold. One, because those books were already on the market, so they could look at it, and plus they also had George there helping them. He actually wrote a couple teleplays, which I'll get to when we get to those episodes. And with him being there, he could help him with notes, similar to what J.K. Rowling was doing with the Harry Potter series. Now, that whole thing did not last, because by the time we get to season 4 and then into season 5, that's when George apparently stopped writing and helping with the TV series. So that's when D&D, the showrunners, started having more of their creative freedom, and of course that's when the show started to fluctuate in quality and went downhill with the last one as a whole. And it is what it is. Of course, there's the whole thing about them wanting to go into Star Wars, and then what happened with the last season, that offer got rescinded. But it is what it is. Overall, I'd say Game of Thrones is an enjoyable show. Has flaws, more so in the latter seasons. But it is still an enjoyable ride. Now, personally, I don't plan on getting the last couple seasons unless I can find them for the cheap, especially the last one. I mean, I could watch them on HBO Max, so there's that. But I do. I'm looking to see if I got a good view of it, but I don't know. Oh, yeah. You can kind of see. I don't know if you could see them, but it's those black cases underneath the TMNT ones, if you can actually see it. But I do have the first 4 seasons on DVD over there, so the best part of the show I do own. And of course I got the books. I got the 5 main ones and just those little tiny ones, and then I got An Iron of 7 Kingdoms and Blood and Fire in hard copy. I do plan on getting the other ones in hard copy eventually, but that's something down the road. But it is a series I enjoy. I'm looking forward to the next 2 whenever they do come out. And it is a series that I could say I could rewatch. It's just one of those ones you got to get in the mood to rewatch, especially with what happened in the last season. But since it's almost been 3 years, depending on when this video does end up going live, since then, I felt this is a time to go back, revisit it, season by season, and see what my thoughts and feelings are now. Like I said, I did enjoy the first 4 seasons immensely when I watched it. Season 5 I liked for what it was. Same with Season 6, even though there are issues here and there. 7 I haven't watched since it went live, so that one, same thing with Season 8. Those ones, we'll see what my thoughts are now, all these years removed. And with a slightly more adult mind, I mean, I was still an adult when I saw them, but I've adjusted my review style and how I look at stuff a little bit more. So watching it with quote-unquote analysis mode, to steal a lowrunnerism, we'll see how it goes. And of course, we'll see what my overall thoughts and feelings on the show are by the end of this whole process. I do not know how long it's going to take me to do all this, because like I said, I don't plan on doing it in a row, so it's not going to be like, like in a year and a half we'll be done. It's going to be probably something that I'll tackle off and on for the next couple years, but once we're done with it, we'll look back and see what my thoughts and feelings on the show as a whole are. Who knows, by the time we actually finish this, the next book might actually be out, so I might be able to give a video on my thoughts on that. I mean, I know there are some of the sample chapters out, and fans are reviewing those too, but it's one of those things like, I don't know if I want to jump into the sample chapters, even though I know a little bit what goes on in them based on what is brought up by the viewers in other videos. But it's one of those things I prefer to be a surprise beyond what has already been mentioned in interviews, like it opening with 2 battles. But anyway, guys, I thank you for watching this video. If you do want to support the channel, you can do it in 2 ways. You can join the Patreon down below for recurring support. If you do, you'll gain access to videos like this earlier, and you'll also be able to suggest topics for future videos. Like this one, of course, was not a suggestion, but as I'm recording this, a review of this is going to be a request by my longtime patron, John. And if you just want to do a one-off request or a one-off donation to help the page, the PayPal link is also down below. Until next time, guys, and remember, winter is coming.